Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the AXR Marketing Director Incubator, the program that helps you have better career conversations and make great career decisions. My name is Mike Dixon. I lead the Sales and Marketing Division at AXR Recruitment and Search. And this morning, I'm delighted to be joined by Vivian Zurlo, General Manager of Marketing and Innovation for Bubs Australia. Welcome, Vivian. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, pretty good, thanks. Pretty good. Guys, we're going to showcase Vivian's career as we always do, and we're going to start out with her time in finance before she moved into marketing and has created a career that's taken her across a number of sectors, from financial services, QSR, publishing, liquor, FMCG. We'll find about how she's approached the big decisions that shaped her career, and talk about advice that she gave in terms of building a career narrative and for enabling you to get the most out of your career. Now, given the number of people on the call today, guys, as always, everyone is muted, but we'd love to hear your thoughts and questions. So be as active as you can on the chat facility. You'll also notice as well there is a QR code which is on the chat. Hopefully that pops up for you. That's really just around it's a bit of a survey. You've been sent a survey on email. We've had a reasonable response, which is where we get a lot of our questions from, but another way to gather feedback. So if you get a minute, just use your phone. Everyone's very comfortable with QR codes and scanning now. So hopefully you can manage that as the session goes on. So look, lots to talk about. Let's get into this. So much I want to discuss about your career, Vivian, but before we do, I'm curious, what do you do when you're not leading a marketing function? What do you do to relax and achieve balance in your life?
I guess, look, I think that's always a struggle, isn't it, getting that balance, but I really just focus on the fundamentals, Mike. It's not, it's pretty simple, just health and family and relationships. And I do have 2 teenage sons, so that keeps me quite busy, of course. And a husband, dog, labradoodle. I look after our mother-in-law lives with us. We've got a full household, and I think 2020 has probably taught us a lot about the importance of having that really solid foundation. So I just stick to the basics. Pretty simple life, really.
Yeah. Oh, and the labradoodle, great. I've got a Portuguese water dog. I'm a big dog fan, and they're actually very similar. People get very confused between the two.
They are very similar, but very cute.
Yes, exactly. Great. Well, let's get into your career. Now, you graduated with a commerce degree at UNSW and with an accounting and finance specialization. You started out in finance before you went went into marketing, and you went back to uni to pick up a master's in marketing. What turned your head? What kind of drew you towards marketing from finance?
Yeah, well, look, it was a great solid foundation to have. I think as a graduate accountant in those days, it was a big 8 back in those days, but I think it's now the big 4. Yeah. I joined an audit team. I worked on a broad range of different clients, mid-sized to large, and I think starting to work in audit actually was in some ways a blessing in disguise, because it probably taught me what I didn't want to do in terms of not going down that accounting career path. But it made me very fascinated about the business growth and strategy and the stories behind the business. So I quickly sort of realized, I guess, that there was I was far more interested in probably creating the numbers, Mike, and rather than reporting on them, and I felt that I really wanted to be I wanted to get more into the heart and soul and the core of the business and understand more about it. And I think once you actually realize too that what is really at that heart and soul of the business is really the value proposition of the business. And it's then you start to understand, well, then I think, for me, it was understanding that the marketing function really had the opportunity to cut across that value proposition more than any other function. It was actually the driver of the business. So I think still to this day, I think, I feel that once you understand, the core value proposition of the business, that's really, really what the, why your business exists and why you're better than others. That's really the driver of fulfilling your value proposition. So I think for me, that was, that curiosity, that interest in understanding more about the business and more about the numbers, and yeah, made me realize that I wanted to go back and do some more study and move into marketing.
Yeah, great. And in terms of your marketing career, McKinsey used this model of the T career. We talked about it in the last session, and it effectively assesses the upwards mobility and potential of a leader, where the vertical part of the T forms the specialization. In this instance, would be marketing, and then the horizontal part of the T is about experiential breadth, which McKinsey says is really important to develop perspective as a leader. Now, you've create a real breadth in terms of the number of sectors you've worked in, which I think is really interesting. You know, you've worked in financial services, publishing, quick service restaurants, FMCG, liquor, a whole bunch of different things. Now, did you set goals in the early stages of your career that you wanted to kind of experience different environments and different sectors like that?
Well, I think looking back on it, I think I was always very fascinated to learn about different industries, and I think that's something that's always been something that's driven me. And I did probably make a decision, I think probably early on, that I didn't want to be too specialized or too niche in one industry only. And I always wanted to build my marketing and commercial skills. And I felt that applying it across different industries and in different environments and challenges, being faced by those industries, was actually going to make me a far better marketer, but also a far better business person as well. So I felt that I really needed to experience and grow by doing that. But it's interesting you talk about the T, because I think now, thinking about the experiences, you build it up over your career, over different industries, I think you do face different challenges across that breadth. But I think that actually does help to sort of almost like fatten the T, if you like, the bottom part. It really gives you a bit more depth in your technical skills. So, on the technical side, you really sort of become more and more rooted and found, stronger foundation in your discipline, your principles of what you do and what you're good at. But you're building a lot more understanding and knowledge of that, how to apply that across different situations, which is really critical, I think, to every business. There's always going to be challenges that you'll face, and you'll draw back on those experiences later on. So I haven't really ever regretted that. I think I've always found that it's always been very very helpful to have that knowledge of different industries.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's fantastic. I mean, having been in recruitment with a particular specialization interest in sales and marketing for a long time, far too long, some would say, but it always frustrates me how difficult it can be to move across sectors. So I'll often have a candidate who comes to me to say, look, I want to try tech or B2B or FMCG or whatever it happens to be, and it can be quite difficult where companies are reticent to take a perceived risk on somebody from a sector or industry they don't know. Why do you think that is?
Look, I know it can be frustrating. It's happened to myself as well over the years. I've come across people who've thought that, and I think probably the root cause of it is that perhaps fundamentally those people who may be thinking that may not really understand, what there's a misconception, I suppose, about what marketing actually does. And once you understand that what marketing actually does, what it means in a business, the fact that those skills that you're building are totally, completely transferable. I think any industry, for a start, any industry I think can be learnt. You can easily learn the fundamentals of what works in that industry. It's as long as you've got those fundamental skills, they can be applied, in many different industries. But I do think I hope it's changing. I hope that frustration, won't be there for too long. But I do think that it's up to us as marketers to really demonstrate how transferable our skills are. That really comes back down to making sure as you think about your own career, what by definition, what's unique about you, but then also, what are the skills that you've built up over your career that regardless of what industry you're in, or regardless of what company you're going to apply for, that you really think about how those skills are transferable. I found that helped when I was looking at when I was looking at joining Blackmores, I built on the fact that, I hadn't worked in vitamins and supplements before, but I'd worked in FMCG, and I knew, I knew the importance of building a brand proposition and, consumer insights and being able to really grow a category. So I could bring those disciplines, but also I'd worked in financial services, and, that's a very highly regulated industry. So, so in some ways, vitamins and supplements and complementary medicine is also very regulated. So you could bring some of that intuition and that knowledge that you have from those industries into that, into that new business. And, I think, inevitably there always will be some barriers, but I think it's up to us as marketers to start to change and break down that by building that, building that trust and that understanding that us as marketers, we can transfer our skills into those industries.
Great. I'm a huge advocate of it. I really am. And one of the reasons I run this program and the Sales Director Incubator as well is for that reason. I want people to think more broadly than the world that they simply sit in right now. And I think by gathering fresh experiences and working in different environments, you do challenge yourself, and you do develop a better skill set that's going to benefit you as you become a more senior leader in your career. I'm interested in what you just said there around using that the McKinsey model, the T, where you talked about the breadth actually of the technical skills. So if you look at the sectors and worlds that you've worked in as a marketer, there's a whole bunch that we've talked about. Have you seen differences as well as similarities? What's it like being a marketer in publishing, for instance, compared to FMCG? Is it actually, when you boil it down, quite similar, or are the things that you had to learn each time that you were moving into a new environment?
Yeah, look, I think that there's definitely a lot of similarities, obviously, and differences as well. In FMCG, I think FMCG marketing by its very nature, it's extremely commercial. I mean, being in a, connecting category drivers, working with your customers, developing consumer brand and product solutions and different needs and occasions. All of these things are very commercial. They get cut across the heart of marketing, category sales, R&D, supply chain, finance, operations, etc. So I think as an FMCG marketer, you have the opportunity to be really, very well rounded in the commercial sense. I think I guess the other side of it is that, perhaps in the liquor industry, for example, where you get a chance to really perhaps, lean into and focus on more is more that highly emotive, experiential side of developing, a consumer experience, a consumer brand proposition, but delivering superior product at the same time. But it is very much about, focusing on that experience and that overall sort of delivery of the brand proposition. So it is different, but I think liquor also is very strategic as well, because you can use NPD, for example, for really targeting certain areas perhaps where in consumption. For example, when I was at Lion with Summer Bright Lager with lime, we launched that beer, but that was all about addressing the declining consumption of beer amongst millennials. So that NPD was used in a very strategic way in that sense. So you learn from that as well. I think magazines or financial services, for example, financial services really is more about lead generation, conversion, customer conversion, cost per lead, cost per sale, etc. So it's all about driving efficiency and value of the customer. And these are all skills that you could absolutely take into an e-commerce business. So it's very simple, similar, I guess I should say, in some ways. There are aspects of marketing which are cut across, but certain industries or certain categories will give you the opportunity to really dial up and hone into those. So I guess it just depends on what you're looking for, what you're needing to fill, what type of gap you're looking to fill in your career, and depending on which industry you're looking to migrate to. Obviously, you've got to appreciate and feel passionate about that industry as well and what you're doing.
Yeah. I think, as you describe it there, I think that's fascinating. Yes, there is some clear similarities in terms of the fundamentals of marketing, but the environments you're working in are really different, and therefore some of the whether it's technical areas are more emphasized than others, because that's actually what you can influence. Those are the levers you've got to pull to actually deliver something. So, really, really interesting. I'm also interested in terms of, the way you've moved through your career. I really like the number of different organizations you've worked with, and I'll list a few here, but from Bankers Trust to Pizza Hut to Murdoch Magazines, IAG back in financial services, then to SC Johnson, Blackmores, and then you landed in Simplot, which is, and you led the category and innovation functions in Simplot. And I think Simplot's a very well run business. How did that come about, and why the kind of step out of more traditional brand marketing?
Yeah, look, I think you're absolutely right. I think Simplot really is at the forefront of understanding the need for category business leadership and bringing the brand function, the marketing function, the innovation function, category business teams all together. During my 4 years in Melbourne with Simplot, I think that opportunity to work in an organisation which was extremely well run, very well, very focused on driving the category, but understanding that as a marketing director or as a head of category or a head of marketing, it was really about bringing those two together to really be able to drive, the strategic sort of objectives of the business and that of your particular business unit. So that really attracted me to that role. I think that, being able to bring together all aspects of the marketing, brand marketing, innovation, category, and also S&OP, integrated business planning. I mean, Simplot's just really at the gold standard from that perspective. So it was a very important learning experience I found in my career, and I think as well, because it's so well run, it's very well very focused on the financials. You become a much stronger commercially focused marketer as a result. I think having that ability to be able to cut across the category as well as the brand function. And also, of course, commercialization of innovation as well. I think that opportunity to be able to take that more integrated approach in driving your category really gives you a lot more insight into the commercial aspects of the business as well.
Yeah, and did that change the way in which you then operated as a marketer when you went back to a more traditional brand marketing role?
It did actually, and I think what it does is it really makes you realize that the whole idea of shopper and consumer being separate, it's just not true. I mean, look, it's all about bringing the shopper and the consumer insight together, and really, as your role as a marketer is to really be able to understand, not only the customer and the category driver, and then what are the shopper insight, but also how that then links in with the overall consumer and the trends and where you're seeing the opportunities are to grow your category. So you're thinking so much more holistically, almost like a general manager of your own business unit, really. So that's how, I think that's how we should, as marketers, start to think, and think far more holistically across the total function of the business.
Yeah. Interesting question on the chat, actually, which I think is relevant. It says, hi, Mike, when talking about the breadth of experience, are you talking about different industries such as liquor, financial services, or would it be also moving to different roles such as marketing to finance, supply chain, or sales? Once you're a senior marketing manager, do you see more merit in one or other direction? And my perspective on that is absolutely. I think it can be tough to do, but I think increasingly organizations, more progressive organizations, are offering opportunities to experience new functions, and I do see people moving between functions. And if the opportunity presents itself to have a stint in supply chain, we talked in a previous incubator session of an organization giving somebody the chance to run a factory for a year because it was important for them to get operational but also leadership experience. So they ran a factory for a year, and they were on a sales pathway, which I think is great. I think you've obviously moved from finance to marketing. I think that's really interesting. I think there's lots of different functional move. Sometimes you need a particular set of qualifications, but in leadership roles, it's actually not so much about the technical piece. It's more about the leadership of a function and experiencing different perspectives. So my view would be absolutely talking about breadth, definitely functional breadth as well as industry or sector breadth. But would you share the same view, Vivian, or have a different perspective?
No, I totally agree. I totally agree, and I think that that makes you so much more well-rounded in your own your skills, but also I think as well building up that level of level of trust as well in you as a brand and you as an individual, as well as what you learn from that. Just by being able to roll up your sleeves and sit down and just understand that there are some things that you don't know, and you've got to really understand and see it from their perspective. So, being able to work in a supply chain function or go and actually, sit down and and work and sit down with the operations manager and understand the business from that perspective. That's really, going to give you so much more depth, I think, as a business leader, in whatever career, whatever eventual path you do go. Yeah, I do definitely agree on that.
Great. Marketers by definition are, I think from day one, think quite strategically about their brand. That's the role. What's what you've got to do. I think that there's a difference, however, between applying strategic thinking to a brand and influencing at a strategic level in a business. At what point in your career did you feel yourself operating at that more strategic level as a leader?
I think that, I do agree that, being able to operate at a strategic level across functions, particularly in the senior leadership level, is really fundamental to growing as a leader. But I do think it takes time, but it also takes situations that you go through to bring that out, and so that you can start to develop your own personal growth story around how you've acquired that sort of more strategic thinking in your role. But I do think that fundamentally it comes down to probably when you first start working in a cross-functional role, where you actually, running projects or running particularly MPD, where you're working across functions on your brand. That's probably where you start to understand and appreciate the impact that certain decisions are making. But really learning to take that strategic level and turning point really came for me in my career at Simplot, I think. So really it was when you actually were operating at that level where you're needing to influence not only sideways, but also with the senior leadership team, but also into the board as well. You're actually able to I think develop a lot more of those skills. But it is something you do learn and build along the way, though. Mike, I don't think you just become, be able to say, okay, that's the day I started, I started thinking strategically. I think you're actually just starting to just build that and learn that, and you've got to throw yourself into those situations where you are actually given the opportunity to step back and look at and think about the the strategic implications of the business, of your brand. Where are the growth opportunities going to come from? Where do you want to play? Where do you want your business to be going? Those things are all those questions that you start to realize are important as you're actually doing the work and doing the working in the business. Yeah. So I think it's something you earn and you learn as well over time.
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes I feel people wait for it to happen. I think they wait for that, as you see, that moment, that role that says, okay, I'm now strategic. Whereas the reality is, I think at earlier stages in your career, you can lead into that, and you can actually put yourself out there and look for opportunities to get involved in projects or to work with mentors or actually start to challenge perhaps people around you, including leadership, on the strategy and think about how your role connects with the strategy. And it's not you're not anointed at a certain time that says you're now a marketing manager, therefore you're now strategic. I think at any stage you can start to think that way, but it is an evolution. It doesn't just happen. So I do agree. Question from Ian Nicholson on the chat. Hi, Vivian. How do you set your priorities when you go into a new role? Do you use something like a 90-day plan? And he's got another question too, but I'll let you answer that one first.
Okay, it's a great question. I think before you even accept the role, I think you actually really have to really think to yourself, well, what difference can I make in this role? What do I hope to achieve? Am I going to be able to make an impact? What are the key needs that I can fulfill in this role that this business is facing? So I think for me it's always been about just understanding really what are the core strategic issues or things that need to be addressed or need to be done in this role, and you need to sort of never lose sight of that. 90-day plan, yes, I mean you sort of loosely follow that, I guess, in your own way when you sort of sit down and think about, well, you need to talk across functionally, you need to absorb what's happening, you need to understand and identify what are the key issues. You need to seek everyone's input and gain an understanding. So that's always important in those first stages, definitely. Really to really fine tune or reassess what you think are the key issues and the key drivers that are going to make an impact. But I do think that before you even accept the role, you do really have to go in there thinking and knowing these are the areas that I feel that I can really make, where I can make a difference and where I can leave an impact. And as long as you've got those formed, they will start to perhaps shift and change and fine tune as you start in the role, because you can never really truly understand it until you're actually in the business. So they will start to evolve, but yeah, I think you do have a bit of a plan in your mind, but like everything, you have to go back and keep testing and proving if those assumptions are right, and you need to keep building on that as you go.
Yeah, great. Back to your career, and after Simplot, you worked at two more tier 1 FMCGs in Lion and Campbell Arnott's before you set up your own marketing, innovation and strategy consultancy called True North, which you ran for a few years. And it seemed you were tempted back into marketing leadership with Bubs Australia last year. Tell us a bit about what tempted you back, and a bit more about Bubs Australia for those who don't know the business.
Yeah, well, look, I did make that move into Bubs after having worked in consulting for 3 years, and I did think that was the right time in my life and my career to do that. I was looking for a role where I was reporting into a board, and having a high growth environment as well was important to me. And I also was looking for a business that was very entrepreneurial and was heading in a space that, for me personally, I'm really quite attracted to and feel that I'm quite passionate about, which is about nutrition and having worked in that nutrition and vitamin space. So I was also attracted by the opportunities of working in Asia as well, across businesses in Asia, and across a company that had a growth trajectory in Asia as well. So there was a lot of things that, for me, I felt that it was the right time to go back and sort of start to work in a listed company as well. So so Bubs, actually, for those people who don't know, Bubs is actually an ASX listed company. It's been around only for about 3 years on the ASX, but as a business itself, it was founded about 10 years ago. So actually by our founder, Christy Carr, who's a mum who decided that she wanted to provide organic baby food for her daughters, and it grew really from a business of organic baby food and pouches and snacks into what's now Bubs Infant Nutrition, and we also have toddler milk and junior drinks as well, but also a range of adult nutritional products as well. But what's really quite unique about Bubs is that at its core is its leadership in the goat dairy industry. So I don't know if everyone knows, but they're actually Australian goat milk. Bubs actually has the majority of exclusive rights to the goat milk, to the goat farmers and goat milk in Australia, and we have our own production facility in Melbourne. So, which is really quite important, because it's also a company, a facility that's certified by the Chinese government as well, in terms of being able to produce infant formula. So that was really when the growth took off then. But what's interesting about this business too is it's also quite strategic in the number of different shareholders in the business who actually become, almost strategic partners as well. So, Alibaba is one of the shareholders. Chemist Warehouse is a major shareholder. So, our shareholders as well have, quite a vested interest and a strong, reason to support the business as well. So, just recently we also launched kids vitamins under the brand of Bubs. And, and that was great to be able to bring all my experience from vitamins and supplements into launching a new vitamin range. But my role as General Manager of Marketing and Innovation, really, I work across Australia and China, but also across the APAC market as well. So we have distributors in, Hong Kong and Singapore and Malaysia. But we have quite a lot of growth aspirations as well about moving into Asia Pacific and also into America as well. So we've got, there's quite a lot of plans, and it's quite a busy role. But I report into the CEO, and I work really closely with the CEO and the executive chairman, and we're a fairly small team, but quite entrepreneurial at the same time, quite dynamic as a business. So I think it brings together a lot of the things that I enjoy. And it's been a very strong strong experience as well in terms of growth for the business, so which has been great.
Fantastic. Exciting times ahead as well. Sounds like a really interesting organization. Another question from the chat now, which I think is interesting too. Have you ever joined a company, Vivian, that hasn't quite understood the full impact that the marketing function has on the value proposition? And if so, how did you help them understand the power of excellent strategic marketing?
Yeah, look, I think it's a really interesting, because it probably hasn't happened where the company itself didn't understand it. It was more about perhaps certain individuals within the organization didn't understand the role of marketing, and maybe in particular you may have had a boss that didn't actually understand. Perhaps you were reporting into a general manager that didn't understand that. So I think those types of I guess challenges. I think the way to really unlock that is to really understand what are the fundamentals of that business that are going to be important, and particularly if you're working in a culture that perhaps is more financially driven and more driven by perhaps the people at the top have got finance and accounting backgrounds and not necessarily marketing backgrounds. Well, that isn't really a reason to sort of think, well, okay, they're not going to understand marketing, because actually what you can do is take that as an opportunity, I think, to really be able to demonstrate how marketing does actually, by creating that value proposition, by being able to understand the fundamentals of what your product and your proposition around pricing, your whole distribution model, everything that's going to be important in creating that value proposition, how all of that fundamentally drives the core value of that business. I think it actually it didn't really actually ever hit home to me actually until how important it is to sort of fundamentally describe it that way, until I started working in consulting, when I was working with one particular entrepreneur who was sitting down, we were talking through what his plans were, and he had a blank sheet of paper. He had an idea, he wanted to start something, and he knew that he didn't really understand the fundamentals of what marketing does. And by just sitting down and being able to sort of just break that down into the real fundamentals, he sort of understood, well, actually marketing is really at the center of the business. You only really fully realize that when you have to start up a business yourself, that you understand how fundamentally important it is to define that what is going to be unique about you, what is your business proposition, what do you want to be stand for, how are you going to create that value proposition in the total business. So I think I think fundamentally it's really about bringing it back into those basic drivers of the business, and then I think financially, I think people do open up and understand then the importance of marketing.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Having set up the AXR sales and marketing business in COVID, I almost so much of my thinking time and actual activity and work has been about building a brand that resonates, that has to have meaning, and how do I bring that? What's the proposition? How do I bring that to life in terms of that value proposition? So I couldn't agree more. I think you've articulated that beautifully. In terms of your career, and a couple more questions to finish off on that before we jump on to the next section. But I'm curious, have you ever turned down a role or opportunity that, on reflection, you wish you hadn't?
Probably no, I don't think I have. I think probably the opposite's probably true. I've probably been thankful of opportunities I did walk away from in hindsight. But I think, look, if an opportunity doesn't progress, it's not about regret. I think it's about the timing. The timing's just not right. I don't believe that you should have regrets, but I do think that there's, no harm in pursuing options to see where it takes you. I think you do need to create options and find out for yourself, just whether it is the right step for you to be taking. But look, I think it's just how it's worked out for me. I don't think I've ever actually sort of sat back and regretted those opportunities. But I think it's just more about understanding, what are that was probably not the right time. It just wasn't the right opportunity.
Great. And what about the future, Vivian? Have you set further career goals, and if so, what do they look like?
Look, I think I've already had quite a lot of broadening roles in my career as well through category, particularly with Simplot and in my time in consulting as well. So I think that's given me a really good understanding of the broad role that you can play as a business leader of a business. So I think within Bubs itself, with the new market opportunities that we do have, I'd like to be able to see sort of having that opportunity to lead a country. That would be a great opportunity to be able to bring a lot of those skills together. Yeah.
Okay, great. And looking at career path support and advice, who do you go to for help with career decisions, or when you're thinking about the pathways that you're taking?
Well, look, I think you always go back and gravitate towards the people that you respect and that that you think highly of as well. So I have worked with some really strong, I guess, mentors in my career, people I do highly respect, and if I am thinking about an opportunity or there's an issue or a decision I have to take about my career, I do tend to talk to people. I think it's important. I believe in that, really opening up and talking to people about it. Doing some research as well for yourself. Getting input from others, and I think the people that know you the best as well. So the people that your loved ones, your family, the people that know you, and also your the people that you've worked with and you respect as well. I think it's important to keep those bonds and keep those relationships going, throughout your career, because I do think that one particular mentor, we've been talking to each other, and I'm aware of what his pathway's been in his career, and he's come to me and talked to me, and I've gone to him and talked to him when I needed to. So it's really important to surround yourself with people that you can talk to about that.
Yeah, and thinking about one of the goals about the marketing director incubator is to help people to approach those decisions, whether it's about reaching out, but it's about thinking more holistically in terms of career rather than perhaps just a job in front of them. And often we get stuck on a job or a title or a salary, and that can limit our decision-making potential, as opposed to thinking really about a potential move from a career perspective. It does make a difference. I'm curious, that said, some people seem to get stuck mid-career. You meet them and they haven't realized their potential, and I'm not sure if you've come across those individuals too. You think, wow, I wonder why you've not gone as far as you could, and then you meet others who have fully realized their potential. Do you think there's a reason why some people do continue to move their career forward, and others find themselves in a position where they feel stuck?
Well, look, I think that everyone does have their own personal journey. I think some people may not necessarily see themselves as being stuck, perhaps, and I think they don't, they'd be quite satisfied. They're feeling fulfilled, and that's entirely fine.
Yeah.
I think you do have, I think you do also need to dig a bit deeper, and if there is some sort of tension or not feeling satisfied or not feeling fulfilled, that's probably, to me, more the definition of being stuck. So it's where you feel like you're not really progressing in a direction that you want to be in. And I think if you're feeling that way, I think the message is it's never too late. It's never too late to address, well, what is it that's actually the reason why you might be stuck in that feeling. Learning and finding a little bit about yourself and your purpose and what you think is really going to be important for you is a really personal thing, and it can mean many different things to different people. But I also think as well that perhaps not moving forward is maybe a little bit about not really fully understanding what it is that brings you joy, and what it is that you want to be doing, and what do you want to be known for in 5-10 years time. It's just all about having those conversations with yourself and talking to others, and being a bit more open to getting some of that feedback as well from others as well. But I don't think you ever really reach a point where you feel like you've arrived at that full potential. I mean, I think you do have to have a feeling, I suppose, that you're moving forward, and that it's a positive way, and that you're learning and growing. I think ultimately that's important. That's the most important thing in your career. But look, I think life is just too short. Don't just take the first step. And I don't think you'll regret it when you do, because it's probably often that unknown of taking that first step that holds us back, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, and I meet a lot of people who are at junctures who come to me for because they're thinking about making a move, or they perhaps aren't as fulfilled as they might be, and I often I'm surprised at how much difficulty people have in articulating their career narrative and being able to describe their journey, and therefore setting a base for a really great career conversation. And without that, it's difficult to make a really informed career decision. And I often, feel, whether that's in an interview or a development conversation, having that kind of authentic narrative is about kind of weaving in an understanding of when things haven't gone right. And often, in an interview, I think, or development conversation, people put their best foot forward, and it's this, wonderfully crafted veneer of perfection, which isn't real. And I think it therefore devalues the conversation to some extent. I think it's critical in getting that right. But why do you think we are still, reluctant to talk about, failure? I mean, and given it how powerful it is in terms of showing development.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. I think I've always valued that. When I speak to a candidate that I might be interviewing, if they talk about the challenges they've faced and how they've overcome that. Look, I think by now we all know that, after year 2020, that you can fully appreciate that life doesn't go to plan, and it's really not, it's not about what happens to you, it's about how you deal with it. I know that's a bit of a cliche, but it is so true. What changes you made and what you learnt from it as a result. And I think I think now more than ever, you really can, I think you can open up and talk about those things. And I think it's really it's going to be really even more critical as as future leaders, or as if you're employing people to join your team as well, that you really sort of dig deeper and find out more about, what did they learn from things that didn't go to plan? What did they take away from that as well? I think honesty in an interview situation is extremely important. I think about when, my my particular, life didn't quite go to plan as well. When I left Simplot, it was for a fantastic role, for, a really dream opportunity that I had as a head of innovation and insights at Lion Dairy and Drinks. And I was in that role, and I was really thriving, really loving the role and the team, a great company. But then, then from family situation arose and we needed to return back to Sydney. So my mother-in-law was quite ill at the time. So we had to go back and take care of her. Now, I'd only been in the role 6 months and I was quite devastated, but I sat down with my, GM at the time and explained to her that, I needed to go back to Sydney and settle my family back in, and, this whole situation had happened. And by being honest about that, she actually came up with a solution that was actually quite a win-win solution for both of us. And, I ended up working 3 days in Melbourne and 2 days in Sydney. Now, obviously that wasn't going to continue forever, but when I did say, well, look, I need to go back to Sydney full time, I took on a contract role for 12 months with Campbell's, and that allowed me to be able to, come back into the market again and, to sort of rethink about what I wanted to do. And I'm always very honest about that in any conversations I have with people, about how that really taught me a lot about how, if things don't quite go to plan, you can, you make another plan, or you find another option, but you also learn a lot through that as well, because it is, really by going through those tough times, I think that you do learn a lot more about yourself as well. And and I think in 5 or 10 years time, when people look back on your CV and they look at 2020, you'll be able to say, well, actually, it wasn't a great year, but but I did these things, or I was able to learn this new skill, or I took on this new opportunity, or my business had to completely pivot, and I learned from that. And that those are going to be the tough times, and I think they're going to bring out those stories that you can talk about in the future. So so I think it's important that we don't shy away from that, and we open up to that when we talk through our life experience, because it's a CV, but it's actually a life behind it. So you do need to have the courage to open up and talk through that. And I think most people would appreciate it. Those that don't, well, they're probably not the right people to be working with. So I think it's important to open up.
Yeah, I think I often think the interview process is a little bit traditional and focuses on successes and wins and the things that have gone right. And actually, you then get a fairly one-dimensional perspective of the person you're meeting, as opposed to really, creating a safe environment to talk about the failures, which are often far more instructive, and how someone's adapted and learned from when situations don't go right, which is the reality of life, and it happens to us all, as opposed to just the complete wins and when you knock out the park. So I think I think all of us who are involved in interviewing or meeting people, I think, need to be, more rounded in how we approach those conversations.
Exactly. Yeah, totally agree.
Great. Goodness, time is pushing on. So a couple of things we always kind of ask in these sessions, Vivian, and I always find it very interesting in terms of the answers. First of all, when interviewing a candidate, what impresses you most, and what can frustrate you?
Okay, well, I guess, look, what I'm probably most impressed about is when I think someone's done their research and they've really thought about what's going to be important into this role, a bit like the question that I think Ian asked earlier. So if you really have an understanding, a little bit more of an understanding of what are the key things that are going to make a difference in this role, how can I apply my experiences and skills, and they try to demonstrate that in how they can add value to that role in the interview. I think that's a true sign that someone's serious about it, and they've really tried to understand for themselves as well what they can bring to the role. On the flip side, probably what frustrates me is when someone hasn't done that research at all, doesn't seem to have any knowledge of the business, and will demonstrate how they might be relevant for the role. But probably the biggest area is where candidates might come in with a negative mindset about their previous employer or current situation, I think that can really that can really be a detrimental thing as well. I think you really need to understand that the employer is really wanting to hear about you and how you can help them, and what they can bring to help you as well. But importantly, how you can help their business. So you need to approach that conversation in a really positive mindset. And no matter how what situation you might be in, it's really important to see that as a learning experience, see what you can take from it, but present that in a way that shows how you've learned and applied new thinking and applied new skills from those situations.
Yeah, I think there's always a push and a pull factor when someone's moving from one organization to another. There's a pull factor in terms of what's interesting, attractive, and exciting about an opportunity that they're going for. But there's a push factor which probably leads into that conversation. But it's being able to craft a narrative that is not overly negative. It's realistic. It's authentic, and you're able to kind of craft that conversation in a way that actually lands logically. But you don't dwell and you don't talk negatively about the people or experiences involved, even if you're feeling particularly bitter at the time or let down or disappointed or trust is gone. All those kind of things sometimes happen. These can be negative influences, but it's more about if that's what's happened, to your point, Vivian, have you learned from it? What has it taught you, and how's it going to create, make you a better person and a stronger individual going forward? So that mindset is very interesting. And I think it's often about making sure when you're interviewing for a role that you check your mindset and you're not going in there with this kind of ball of negativity that's waiting to come out. That you've actually dealt with that before you're ready to interview for a new role. Otherwise, it's an experienced interviewer will see that very quickly.
Yes, absolutely. Yep, totally agree.
Before we get into some open questions, and there's quite a few to get through, so we'll do what we can to achieve that. But we'll finish up as we do in every session with what 3 pieces of advice would you give an aspiring marketing director?
Okay, well, look, I think the first thing is really, gain cross-functional and category team experience. Earn that trust, earn that credibility as a leader. I think you really got to show, as I said before, how you can function in tough times as well as the good times. So I think you need to demonstrate collaborative skills. I think that's really important. So put yourself in a situation where you get the opportunity to work on those types of projects and gain that trust. I think it's also important to be honest about where your skill gaps are as well, and take on opportunities or projects that are going to give you the chance to sort of close that skill gap as well. As a marketing director, getting a good grounding in commercial aspects of a business, I think is really important as well. So that's an important skill to make sure you've covered off on as well. But I think also, demonstrating strategic leadership, thought leadership, and we said this before as well. It's no matter what what role you're in, what level of the business you're in. Just be known as someone who can see the course that you're on. Maybe identify areas that might be opportunities or or threats, or perhaps come up with a direction. So be known as someone that can help drive the pace and drive the course and drive the thinking, but also be someone that can also support that with good sound business case and research and have that support to back yourself up. So I think really being able to get cross-functional skills, learning that, getting that trust and credibility, being honest about your skill gaps and taking on projects even if they scare you, because they're the ones that you probably need to do to learn from. And then then finally as well, just demonstrating that strategic thinking no matter what role you're in, and just sort of pushing ahead and thinking strategically.
Great advice. Yeah, fantastic. There's a question we missed from Ian earlier on, which I think is interesting. Who's had the biggest influence on your career and why?
Oh, okay. Who? Right, it's hard to put it down to as one particular person, but I guess, look, I think my probably my mentor. I think I've taken a lot from him. It's talking with him and speaking with him, and he used to be my boss in my previous role at Blackmores. So he is someone that I've always stayed in contact with, and I think when you have conversations with someone like that you do really respect, and they can often give you a very sort of someone who can give you a very realistic point of view, and can cut through things and tell and say things as they are. I think that's for me, it's been important to find that sort of that person that you can come back to and have that sort of solid conversation with.
Right. Time for one more, I think, but what's the first thing you do when you suffer a setback?
Look, I think, obviously we all go through this. There's always going to be a setback. So I think the first thing is you sort of have to understand, well, what can I learn from this? I think that's the first thing. Okay, it's happened. You don't dwell on it. It's happened. What can I learn from this? And I think as well as leaders, particularly now, being able to have that ability to have some resilience and know that there is a way to resolve this. Thinking about options, thinking about, well, how else could I adapt or change my approach, or what can I do differently? To either find another option or find another solution. I think that's important. But really saying to yourself, what can I learn from this? I think that's a really important first step.
Great, fantastic. Vivian, that's fantastic. Perfect. Thanks for your time and sharing your journey today. I think I love the fact that your journey's been so different. You worked in so many different sectors. You talked about how you've kind of picked up something everywhere, which is kind of gives you that perspective and that ability to lead in your current role, which does feel like you're kind of taking lots of bits and pieces from all your roles and applying them into the environment you are with Bubs right now, and it feels like a really exciting journey ahead with that organization. I hope for everyone on the call that today's session will help you think more about your career narrative. We want to give you the tools to be really prepared to make great career decisions. That's the whole point of the program. For those who are on the live session, listening to the podcast or the recording. On the podcast, for those who haven't, please subscribe to Your Future in Sales and Marketing on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If you can review and rate us, that will help others find us. So please do that. The next Marketing Director Incubator is on Tuesday, the 8th of December. So that's a Tuesday, not a Thursday, just a note. For those who were on a couple of weeks ago, we couldn't get Megan Farquhar on from midnight in Amsterdam. She's the Global Marketing Director at JDE. We've figured a way, we're going to make it work, but we're doing it Tuesday. So Tuesday the 8th, and then we're going to finish up this season, the first season, with Derek Oliver at Blackmores on December 17th. So he's new to Blackmores, Vivian. You not there when you were there, but so a couple of really interesting interviews to come that will take us through to Christmas. For those who are interested, the Sales Director Incubator continues as well. So the next session is with Jamie Eastley of Primo on Thursday, the 3rd of December, and you're very welcome to join that program. Please let us know. We can send you the link, or you can watch my social feed where the link will be on there. Finally, we'd love you to do the survey, guys. We'll resend that again for those who've got time just now. Just quickly look at that QR code. But otherwise, thanks again, Vivian. Really enjoyed the conversation this morning. Thanks everyone for joining us, and guys, have a great Thursday.
You're welcome. Thanks, Mike. And well done for putting this on as well, Mike. This is a really, really useful and really important thing you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, guys.